For more on the conflict in the Middle East, I'm joined now by co-host of Planet America, John Barron. John, great to see you here. Now, we've had these peace talks held in Pakistan over the weekend. They dragged right on into the early hours of the morning. What have we heard from the US president on those failed talks?
It's interesting, Joe, because some have said 21 hours of talks sounds like a lot. But in fact, if you're trying to reach an agreement between the US and Iran that took many years to reach back in the Obama administration when the original Iran nuclear deal was signed in 2015. It was the result of many years of talks to try and put limits on Iran's ability to enrich in uranium and to stop them getting too close to that red line where they had all the component parts to potentially break out and turn what they maintain is a civilian nuclear program into a nuclear weapons program. So the US has had these ongoing concerns that they have lost control over Iran's ability to enrich and to hide its enriched uranium. This time at least, unlike the previous talks that ended rather abruptly with America and Israel attacking Iran back in February, this time at least, Joe, there was a very traditional delegation, along with JD Vance, the Vice President, so sending a high-level government official, not just Donald Trump's golfing buddy Steve Witkoff and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, who are both experienced business negotiators, but know absolutely nothing about nuclear weapons and enrichment and centrifuges and everything else that you need to know a lot about if you're going to hammer out a deal to try and prevent a country from breaking out and getting a weapon. This time Vance brought a team of reportedly about 70 with him, including technical experts, nuclear scientists, physicists who are able to talk to their Iranian counterparts and get to the kind of granular detail that frankly hasn't been seen between the US and Iran since 2015 and the finalisation of that deal that Trump ultimately tore up 3 years after the Obama administration had signed it. Now, this is a sign of, on the one hand, Donald Trump bowing to the realities of you can't just improvise ad hoc and make up a deal such as this. It's very complicated. But the fact that after 21 hours in Islamabad, JD Vance has said, well, we tried, and Trump has said, it doesn't really matter to me, we've got them beat. If we don't get a deal, we don't get a deal. The inference being we can just keep blowing them up. Now the question is what happens next? We've got reports about this US naval blockade to stop vessels that have come through the Strait of Hormuz to be able to sell their cargo, principally oil, but fertiliser and other things as well. Some military and maritime experts have been saying, Joe, they should have done this 3 weeks ago. They allowed Iran to get a stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz and to use that economic leverage against the United States and the world. The United States should have had the foresight to use their blue water navy outside the straits, beyond where the Iranian fast boats and mines can get to stop Iran being able to export its own oil, because Iran has, of course, continually been selling its own oil that's been desanctioned by America to make it even easier for them to sell their oil. So some are saying this is the right move. The question is, are we now going to see Trump say, we gave peace a chance, we've given it a week, we gave them a 2-week deadline. If they're not reopening the straits by this time next week, do the bombs start flying again? And that is the big unanswered question right now. Does Trump see that, in fact, blowing things up, 13,000 airstrikes didn't bomb Iran into submission? Will 14,000? Will 15,000? That is the big unopened question. And how long Donald Trump remains patient with a war that he must now surely realise, in a conventional sense, he cannot win. This is not a winnable war, it's just a war where he can still inflict masses of damage. But Donald Trump isn't known for his patience or his ability to keep focused on a certain issue, particularly if it's not a winning one politically. So he is clearly tempted to start moving on. He's going to mixed martial arts bouts, he's praising golfers, he's attacking the Pope. He's doing all sorts of things now to kind of say, hey, look over here, I'm not really fussed by this whole war thing, I've moved on.
And seemingly framing it as a win regardless of the outcome, certainly as well. You mentioned that attack on Pope Leo. Let's just have a listen to Donald Trump's comments on that.
We don't like it. We don't like a Pope that's going to say that it's okay to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want a Pope that says crime is okay in our cities. I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Pope Leo. He's a very liberal person, and he's a man that doesn't believe in stopping crime. He's a man that doesn't think that we should be toying with a country that wants a nuclear weapons so they can blow up the world. I'm not a fan of Pope Leo.
So criticism there of Pope Leo from Donald Trump, not a new sentiment there from him.
No, this is an escalation, though, of the war of words between the two. The Pope didn't say that in exactly those words what the president is claiming. He said, not just in that statement to reporters, but in an even lengthier post on his Truth social media website, where he accused Leo of favouring crime. Ridiculous, and also going into lengthy complaints about how the Catholic Church wanted help in protecting priests who wanted to reopen their churches during COVID. Litany of complaints. Of course, Leo was not the Pope back then. That was when Donald Trump was picking fights with the previous Pope, of course. And so he's got form here. Donald Trump doesn't like somebody else who has power that disagrees with him. And the Pope clearly has power, not just around the world, but over the tens of millions of Catholics who have been largely supportive of Donald Trump, certainly were in the last election. The Catholic vote, which has often been more towards the Democratic Party, switched to Donald Trump. His polls are down right now. Criticism from the Pope who called his threats to kill civilization in Iran last week. The Pope said that was unacceptable. The Pope was quite critical of Trump's language. And that's what this is really about. It's not about crime in America's cities or even about Iran's right to enrich uranium or have a nuclear weapon. The Pope doesn't favour Iran having a nuclear weapon. He hasn't said that. This is about the Pope basically castigating Donald Trump and Donald Trump not liking it. But it is a funny fight for Donald Trump to pick, because Pope Leo, even though he's a relatively newcomer to the office, he is popular in the United States. And Donald Trump accusing the Pope of wanting to become a politician, I'm not sure is going to go down too well with the faithful in the United States, nor indeed will the very next post on Truth Social after that attack on Pope Leo. Inexplicably, President Trump then sent out yet another one of these AI-generated images of him basically in a messianic pose. Look at that. He's healing the sick there, I think, while various angels are around and a nurse is in attendance and the American flag is flying. But not so long ago that would have been condemned widely as sacrilegious. And the fact that an American president is deifying himself after attacking God's chosen representative on earth, the Pope, is still rather astonishing, I think.
Absolutely. Let's turn to some other major international news that we've been covering today, and that is the result out of Hungary, the ousting of their leader, Viktor Orban. Why is the US president so invested in this result and in Viktor Orban as well?
So fascinating, Joe. Viktor Orban, in a sense, is a proto-Trump. He was the first far-right populist anti-immigration figure. He came to power in Hungary just after the global financial crisis, an economic shock that continued to reverberate through the world and through the United States and helped Donald Trump himself get elected 6 years later in 2016. And Donald Trump and many of the people around Trump looked to Viktor Orban, even though he was the leader of a country of fewer than 10 million people in Eastern Europe, unnaturally close to Russia. Somehow the idea got into Trump's head and the heads of people around him that Viktor Orban was a model for Trump to follow. And he did, to a large extent, and indeed it was very successful for Donald Trump for a period of time as well. Like Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, though, was then widely seen as having corrupted his office and eroded democracy. But he also was something of an inspiration for Donald Trump and the Project 2025 blueprint that came out of the Heritage Foundation about how you effectively indoctrinate the government, how you get rid of what they see as woke left-wing ideologies, diversity policies, inclusion policies, and how you Trumpify or Orbanify the civil society and the government administration, the judiciary as well. So Orban's defeat, some people are optimistically viewing that as, well, this is the beginning of the end for not just Viktor Orban, but for Donald Trump, and it means Marine Le Pen won't get elected in France. There's really no sign that the wave of right-wing populism is going to end with just one Viktor Orban. But it is an intriguing development, as was Donald Trump and J.D. Vance openly campaigning for Viktor Orban as recently as last week, when that is traditionally quite unusual for American presidents to put their finger on the scale in an election between two conservatives. Peter Magyar, Orban's replacement, is not a liberal. He's not some lefty that's come on the scene. He is a former member of the same party as Viktor Orban, a former advisor of his. But he is a more mainstream conservative figure, not a populist figure in the way of Orban. What this also means, of course, for the United States is, analysts have told us today, NATO is stronger, the European Union is stronger, and Russia is weaker because they no longer have Viktor Orban, who is effectively a double agent in NATO meetings. Orban is, according to intelligence reports, he would be getting on the phone while having secret discussions with NATO and EU ministers. He'd be getting on the phone to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying, well, this is what they're going to do. You better get ready for this announcement. He was talking out of both sides of his mouth. So this is a blow to the Kremlin. It moves Hungary back into Europe. But the question is, what does this mean for America's relationship with both Hungary and Europe? And is this ultimately a further step in the United States extricating itself from Europe? Because, at least under Donald Trump, they don't want to oppose Russia and side with Europe in quite the same way as we've expected since 1945.